Chapter 1 of Tanya. So the Alter Rebbe introduces his book of Tanya by beginning with a Talmudic statement that says that before the soul comes down on earth to be paired with a body, the soul is given an oath. And the oath is that you should be a tzaddik, you should be a righteous person, and you should not be a sinful person. You should do mitzvahs and not sin. And the second part of the oath is that even if everyone tells you you're a tzaddik and you're doing the right thing, in your eyes you should always be as if you are a sinful person. And the Alter Rebbe really begins Tanya by questioning what is the idea of looking at yourself for yourself as if you're a sinful person. First of all, we told elsewhere that you should never feel as if you're a sinful person. Second of all, practically, if you feel like if you're a sinful person, that means that you will feel depressed because no matter what you're doing, you still are not climbing the ladder to righteousness. And if you don't feel depressed, that means you're comfortable with feeling as a sinful person will actually bring you to do sin. So this is how the Alter Rebbe opens up his book of Tanya, and really he's trying to understand what is a tzaddik, what is a righteous person, what is a rasha, what is a sinful person. And he introduces a third thing which the Talmud brings, is a Beinoni, an intermediate person, which is actually the basis of this whole book, is to explain what a Beinoni is. But before we understand what an intermediate person, we have to understand what is a righteous and what is a sinful person. Is a righteous person someone who has more mitzvahs than sins? So if you put it on a scale, it weighs a little bit more, the mitzvahs weigh a little more than the sins. And that's what most people will think. And the Alter Rebbe writes that in terms of reward and punishment, that's correct. When God judges us every year, Rosh Hashanah, if we have more mitzvahs than sins, then we are considered righteous in judgment. But to say that this is the essence of what it means to be a righteous person doesn't make sense. When he brings Rabbah, who is the leader of his generation, he said, I am a Beinoni, I'm an intermediate person. How could the Rabbah be intermediate that he never ever did a sin in his life? He never even stopped studying of Torah. So he never did any sins. So how could he even call himself an intermediate person? And then Alter Rebbe goes a little deeper and says the fact is that if you do one sin, all over in the Torah we find you're called a sinful person. So you don't even have to have multiple. One sin, you're a sinful person. And what type of sin is not a terrible sin? Even if you didn't study Torah, which most people don't have a chance to escape this sin. And they consider it a rasha, a sinful person. So what does it really mean, a tzaddik? Obviously, that he has no sins. A tzaddik has no sins. A rasha, even if you have one sin. What is a Beinoni? That's what we're going to learn in Tanya, what a Beinoni is all about. But the Alter Rebbe continues and he says that every one of us has two souls. And he starts with talking about the worldly soul. We have a worldly soul that's part of our body. So our body's made up physically of four elements: earth, fire, water, and air. And so too, the soul part of our body is made up of these four elements spiritually. And therefore we find that the characteristics in the soul, the negative characteristics in the soul, in our what we call the worldly soul, or later we'll call the animal soul, has these four elements. For instance, anger and ego and boasting comes from air. It's hot air. Fire, it comes from fire. And then you have all types of pleasures that a person runs after, comes from water, because water is what gives growth to everything that gives us pleasure. Earth is heavy. Laziness, melancholy, depression are all connected to earth. And air is empty. Idle talk, scoffing, these are things that have emptiness to them. So these elements are part of our worldly and worldly soul that we have that's negative. By Jews, there is a positive side to it as well, or potential for a positive. And that is the three characteristics that the Jews are known for, is that we are modest, we are pitiful people, we have pity on people, and we are charitable, we're helpful to people. those are good characteristics, and those come actually from the worldly soul as well, because the Jewish worldly soul has some positive in it as well. And as we're going to learn later, the different types of klippa, different types of elements of negative or things in this world that hide God. But non-Jewish souls, worldly souls, are all fully part of this world, and they all have the elements of the world which are self-centered, and therefore everything that they do is nothing selfless in there. It's all about serving themselves in one way or another. This concludes chapter 1.